In today's video, we're going to be playing with all one-ofs in Modern. It's because we're playing Lutri the Spell Chaser. This is a creature that can be your companion if each non-land card in your starting deck has a different name, meaning that our deck is going to be filled with only one-ofs. So when looking at the deck, there's some obvious powerhouses like Expressive Iteration and Ragavan, but there are also a lot of cool fun one-ofs, like Chandra Hope's Beacon, or Shadow of Doubt, and an old fan favorite, Jace Byron's Prodigy. But the overall theme of this deck is to be a blue-red control list that also gets Lutri as its companion. So we're going to be taking this wild list and seeing if Lutri is playable in the Modern format.
We're on the play with a decent looking hand. We go turn 1 Misty, opponent plays out a Mine, then plays out a Chromatic Star. We draw an island, we'll play that out and hold up Mana Leak. Opponent cracks their star for green, cycling, then cast an Ancient Stirrings, which we will Mana Leak. Then they go force into another star. We draw a Foff, we play out our Strand, fetch out an island and cast our Fable. Opponent cycles their star for a green, then plays another forest. We draw a Strand for turn, we will loot away both of our lands with Fable, then we attack in for 2, getting a treasure. We'll play out our Shredder and then cast Op, conniving with Shredder, and we'll discard our Memory Deluge off of the connive, and then we'll keep a land on top, drawing it and playing it out for turn. Opponent plays out an Ancient Stirring and just concedes on the spot, so let's get on to sideboarding. For sideboarding, we're going to take out a Hazard, a Heat, a Chandra, a Fury, a Dead Gone, Memory Deluge, and a Dress Down. For Magus, Alpine Moon, Flusterstorm, Test of Talents, Force Negation, Subtlety, and a Mystical Dispute. Game 2, our 7 looks great. Opponent goes turn 1 Mine into a star. We draw an EI, we'll play out an island and hold up our Spell Pierce. Opponent makes a green off of star, then plays a Stirrings, which we will Spell Pierce. Then they go force into a Haywire Mite. We draw another island, we'll play out our Tarn and hold up Logic Knot. Opponent cycles a Will and misses their land drop. We draw another land, we'll play out an island and hold up Knot still. Opponent plays out a Sphere, cycles it for a green, and then casts out an Ancient Stirrings, and we'll Logic Knot it unless they pay 1. We draw a Test of Talents, and then we'll cast an EI, putting Counterspell into our hand, Jawari Disruption on the bottom, and Flood Stranded Exile, playing out our land. Opponent untaps, misses another land drop, and concedes. Let's get on to match number 2. We're on the draw for match 2, and our starting 7's a little too weak, so we got them all. And our 6 looks quite good. We'll put back an island and keep. Opponent goes Stomping Ground into a Grazer, putting in a Sacred Foundry. We top deck a Blood Moon, we'll play a tap Steam Vince. Opponent plays a Plains into a Spyro, discarding Brutal Cathar and a Sokunzan. We top deck a Ledger Shredder, but we're still going to hold up Shadow of Doubt here, because we're not certain what our opponent's on. Opponent plays out a Firelit Thicket into a Strangleroot Geist, then attacks us for 5. And at this point, Strangleroot Geist definitely means that they're on a Winota build, so we're going to hold up our Shadow of Doubt for the rest of the game, because they do play cards like Court of Calling and Eldritch Evolution. Then they follow up with the Birds of Paradise. We top deck an Opt, we'll play our island and hold up Opt. Opponent attacks in for another 5, then casts out a Spellskite and goes Hellbent, playing out a Stomping Ground. And we opt on the instep, bottoming a Murktide and finding an Expressive. We find a Misty, we'll play out Shredder and then play our Misty. And opponent untaps, casting an Eldritch Evolution, and we finally get paid off for our Shadow of Doubt. So in response, we'll fetch and cast out a Shadow of Doubt. 2 mana counter draw card's pretty sweet. Then opponent attacks in with the team, we'll block the Elemental token and take 5, going down to 4. We draw another island, we'll play out our Blood Moon, and then play out a Steam Vince, and we are going to fire off this Expressive Iteration just so that we can get a Connive. This is because we want to be able to block the Strangleroot guys and the Spyro profitably. And we draw a Lose Focus off of that, and we will discard that. And we'll put a Dead Gone into our hand, putting Counterspell on the bottom and exiling our Unholy Heat, losing it. Opponent attacks in for 2, and we will for sure block. We top deck a Chandra, so we will play that for 6 mana, and we will -2, dealing 2 damage to Geist and their Birds of Paradise, and they redirect one of the targets to Spellskite, saving their Birds of Paradise. Opponent plays out an Ignoble Hierarch, passing. We top deck a Spell Pierce. We cast a Memory Deluge, and it gets copied off of Chandra. And the copy sadly doesn't do anything because I forgot that this says, look at the top X where X is the amount of mana spent on it, and when it's copied, it's 0, so we look at 0 cards. Then our first Deluge resolves, and we'll put Murktide Regent and a Lightning Bolt into our hand, play out our land for turn, cast out a Murktide Regent, which also connives. We draw a Jace, so we'll discard our Spell Pierce, and then we'll tick up with our Chandra, doing nothing with it. And on our end step, they activate Spyro, getting 2 1/1s. Opponent plays out a Grazer, and no attack. So on the end step, we will bolt their Spellskite, which gets copied because of Chandra, meaning that we kill the Spellskite. We draw a Spyro, we tick up with Chandra, and we exile a Fact or Fiction, and we'll hold up our mana, passing back to the opponent. Opponent casts out a Voice of Resurgence, so in response, we will cast our Fact or Fiction, and this gets copied because of Chandra. So with our first Foff, we hit 4 lands and a spell, so they do a 4-1 split, and with Jace in our hand, we'll take the 4 lands. And second Foff is much better, and we'll take the Fire Ice Consider and a land, and then we will consider in response to the Voice, conniving with Shredder, and we find a Fury, fantastic draws. We draw a Bauble, we'll lead on down ticking with Chandra, killing a 1/1 and an Elemental token. Then we'll evoke out our Fury, and before we get to target anything, they concede. So let's get on to sideboarding. We're going to take out Deluge, Spell Pierce, Shadow of Doubt, Ragavan, Mistress Bauble, and a Blood Moon, a Relic, EE, Unlicensers, Subtlety, Anger of Gods, and a Brotherhood's in. Game 2, we'll keep a risky 7. Opponent goes turn 1 Canopy into a Burnton Forge Tinder. We draw Subtlety, we'll bolt in our Shatter Skull Smashing, then play an EE out on 1. Opponent shocks in a Stomping Ground into a Strangleroot Geist, then attacks us for 3. We draw Steam Vents, we'll fetch out an island and hold up EE activation. Opponent plays out a Colony Garden, getting a plant, and then casts another Geist. They attack in for 5, and we will pop our EE, killing the Forge Tinder. Then we take 4, going down to 9. We draw another land, so we're just going to buy our Lutri this turn. Opponent plays a Sokinzon into a Winota, so we have to Subtlety this. And we pitch our Lutri and put this back on top of their deck. Then they attack us for 4, going down to 5. And we draw a Sphaloon for turn, and we are just dead on board, so we'll scoop it up and get on to game 3. Game 3, we keep a risky 1 lander, but definitely worth keeping. We go turn 1 Misty, holding up Consider, and opponent goes turn 1 Grazer, putting in a Colony Garden, getting a 1/1. So on their end step, we'll fetch Shock and cast Consider, seeing a land on top, so we keep. We draw another land, we'll play one out, fetch out an island, and cast out our Shredder. Opponent casts out a Strangleroot Geist into another Colony Garden. Ooh, we top deck a Fury. We'll play our Scalding Tarn, holding up our interaction. Opponent plays out a Plains into a Forge Tinder. And after thinking about it for a while, I do think that we have to let this resolve. Opponent does something else, so on the end step, we'll cast our Snapcaster Mage and cast a Consider. We trigger Shredder Conniving, getting rid of our Fire Ice, and we'll bin a island, finding a Fable. Then we draw into an Expressive Iteration, and again, we'll hold up interaction. Opponent plays out a Voice of Resurgence, so we will mana leak that. We top deck a Hearse, amazing draw, but again, we're going to hold up Bolt and Logic Knot. Opponent fetch shocks for Temple Garden, and slams a Geist Honored Monk. And if you've never seen this card, it's a power and toughness equal to the number of creatures you control, and when it enters the battlefield, make 2 1/1 Spirit tokens with flying. And surprisingly, I think this is okay. So their board is terrifying, but I think we're okay here. We'll cast our Unlicensed Hearse, play our island, and then evoke out a Fury, pitching our Fable, and then conniving with Shredder. And we draw into a counterspell, so we get rid of our Logic Knot. And we just try killing a bunch of creatures, and they sack their Forge Tender. Opponent plays out a Strangleroot Geist, then attacks them with their Geist Monk, and we'll take 8 damage. And on their end step, we will bolt one of the Geist and exile it with Hearse. We draw a Strand, we'll cast out our EI. Oh, these are some amazing cards. So we're going to put Brotherhoods into our hand, Charm on the bottom, and Smashing into exile, and play that as our land drop. Opponent plays a Mountain into a Winota, so we will counterspell that. Then they attack him with their 7/7, and we are going to chump block with Snapcaster Mage, because we're casting this Brotherhoods in anyways next turn, so our Snap would die anyways. We top deck our Dress Down, and we will cast a Plague Wind on the opponent, and in response to the Undying trigger, we will exile it with our Hearse. Then we'll play a Strand, and then buy our Lutri, and attack in for 3. Opponent plays out a Geist, and attacks us for 2. We top deck a Sphaloon, we'll slam that, then attack in for 3. Opponent plays out their land, and then casts a Spyro, so we will Dress Down. And opponent scoops them up. Let's get into match number 3. We are on the play, and hand looks fine. We'll go turn 1 Strand. Opponent casts out a Bauble, looking at their top, and then plays out an island. We find a Consider, a good draw. We'll play out another Strand, passing back. Opponent plays out a Canal, and on the end step, we cast a Consider. We'll bottom our Brazen, and we draw a Ragavan. We top deck a Serum Visions. We'll play that out, draw into a Cryptic, and we'll bottom the Bolt, keep the Scalding Tarn on top. Then we'll play out a Ragavan. Opponent shocks in a Steam Vents and casts out a Spyro, discarding a Slip out the back and then a Holy Heat, meaning they're on blue-red scam. We draw our Tarn, play it out, and we'll hold up Cycle Shark Typhoon or a Cryptic. Opponent plays a Bauble into an island, then bolts our Ragavan, then attacks in with the team. We'll fetch out an island and cycle our Shark Typhoon for 2. So we make a 2/2, find another Tarn, and block an Elemental, killing it. Then opponent cracks a Bauble and casts out a 6/6 Murktide. We top deck a Charm. We'll fetch out an island, play a 5/5 Murktide into a Sphaloon, Sea and Sky. Opponent plays an Islet, cracks it, and attacks in for 6. We find an island. We'll attack in with Sphaloon, drawing a card. And we top deck a Chandra. Then we'll play on our island. Opponent goes to combat, and before that, we'll cast Cryptic, drawing a card and tapping their team. Finding a Jawari Disruption. Opponent fetch shocks, and then cast a Fury, so we get to Jawari's Disruption this. We top deck another land, and we'll attack in with Sphaloon. And yes, I did miss lethal possibly with Chandra, because I did not realize this can deal it to players as well as creatures. We draw another land. We'll buy a Lutri, and then play out a Tarn. Opponent plays a Bauble into a Slip out the back on our Murktide, and then cast another Slip out the back on our Shark token, so we have to counter this. And they have a Spell Pierce for that, meaning they have lethal on board. So let's get on to game number 2. We end up keeping a fine 7 in game 2, leading on a turn 1 Misty, holding up our Opt, and opponent goes turn 1 Steam Vents into a Ragavan. We opt in response, bottoming a land and finding another land. We draw another land for turn, we'll cast out our Jace. Opponent plays a Tarn, kills our Jace, and attacks him with Rag, exiling a Mana Leak. We top deck a counterspell, we cast a EI, getting a land in our hand and casting out a Ragavan. Opponent evokes out a Fury, and then casts a Slip out the back on it, then plays an Islet, attacks in for 2, steals our Sphaloon, casts it out,
and we end up finding another land off the top, so opponent has us here. Let's get into match number 4. Match 4, we're going to keep our 7. Opponent goes turn 1 Steam Vents into a Soul Scar. We top deck lose focus, we'll shock in our Steam Vents and cast a heat on the Soul Scar. Opponent plays a mountain into a Sprite Dragon, and then they attack in for 1. We find a sinkhole, we'll play out an island, holding up Shadow of Doubt and lose focus. Opponent plays out a mountain into a Swift Spear, and then casts out an EI, and we'll cast a lose focus on this. Then they cast out a Bauble, triggering both their prowess creatures, and they attack us for 6 down to 11. And we find a Fable, so we'll play out a Misty, we'll fetch and shock so we can cast Smashing next turn, and then we'll sinkhole the Sprite Dragon. Opponent casts a Bolt targeting us, then cast another Bolt, and that means they have lethal, and they also have a mutagenic growth. So we'll get on to sideboarding. We're going to take Chandra, Blood Moon, Shadow of Doubt, Factor Fiction, Cryptic Command, Memory Deluge, and Jace out for EE, Flusterstorm, Force Negation, Mystical Dispute, Unlicensed Curse, Subtlety, and a Test of Talents. Game 2, our 7 looks amazing. We'll lead on a Bauble, looking at our top, seen an EI, so we'll play out our turn. Opponent goes Spire Bluff into a Soul Scar. We top deck a Test of Talents, we'll play Island and pass. Opponent shocks in a Steam Vents and plays out a Swift Spear, then attacks in for 2. And on their end step, we'll Brazen Borrower, bouncing the Soul Scar. We draw a Tarn, we'll cast out our Iteration, and they cast a Spell Pierce on it. So we'll play our Tarn and pass back. Opponent casts out a Sprite Dragon, then attacks in for 2. We top deck a Shredder, we'll play that out, then evoke out a Fury, conniving with our Shredder, and we'll discard a Test of Talents. And we'll do 3 to Swift Spear and 1 to Sprite Dragon. And that works. Then we'll play Disruption as our land. Opponent casts out a Soul Scar, we draw a Charm, we'll attack in for 2, and opponent casts a Bolt on our Shredder. And in response, we will steal their Soul Scar, and then opponent takes 2, going down to 15. Opponent casts out a Sprite Dragon, and attacks in for 1. We draw a Mana Leak for turn, we'll attack in with our Mage, and hold up our interaction. Opponent casts another Sprite Dragon, so we will Mana Leak that. We draw a land for turn, we'll play that out, and attack in with our Soul Scar. Opponent plays out a DRC, and on their end step, we'll cast out our Brazen Borrower. We top deck an island, we'll attack in with our Mage and our Borrower. Opponent casts out a Lava Dart, targeting our Brazen Borrower, and we'll let that happen. And they block with their Sprite Dragon, so we'll cast out our Snapcaster Mage, and we'll target our Archmage's Charm. And I forgot to cast it, oops, that's okay. We'll Archmage Charm, taking the opponent's DRC, conniving with our Shredder, and in response, they flash back their Lava Dart, trying to kill their DRC, and we connive with Shredder again, and they put a dart in the yard, and we'll discard our island, and then Lava Dart kills their DRC. Ooh, and Shark Typhoon's definitely better than Saloon, and then we'll pass back. Opponent cast out a Bauble, looking at our top, and then they attack with their Sprite Dragon, we will block it, and they cast a Lava Dart, triggering connive, and we'll discard the Serum Visions, and we top deck a counter spell, we'll pick up our Lutri, and hold back our Snap. They shock in the Steam Vents, and then cast a Breach, so we will counter that. Opponent attacks in, casts a Mutagenic Growth, pumping their Sprite Dragon, and then they cast a Lava Dart from their yard, and then cast another one, killing us. So let's get on to match number 5. Our 7 looks quite strong. Opponent goes turn 1 Howled Fountain into a Sentinel. We find a Brazen Borrower, we'll play our island, play out our Bauble, and pay for the Sentinel tax. Opponent plays out a Saga into a Reality Chip, then attacks in for 1. We top deck a Fop, we'll play out our Scalding Tarn, passing back. Opponent plays a Plains and attacks in for 1. And on the end step, we will try and bolt the Esper Sentinel, and we'll pay for the tax. And then we'll Bauble the opponent, looking at their top, seeing a land. We draw a Strand and a Dead Gone, we'll play out our land. And on our end step, they make a Construct. Opponent makes another Construct, and they pick up a Star off of their Saga, and they play out a Shadow Spear, and they attack in for 5, so we'll use our Brazen Borrower to bounce it. We top deck a Misty, we'll play one of them out, and hold up our interaction. Opponent plays out a Thopter Foundry, so I guess this is not Hammer, and then they sack their Star to their Foundry, making a 1/1, and then they attack in for 5, which we'll take. And on their end step, we'll cast a Factor Fiction, and we'll take the first pile. Ooh, and we top deck a Fury, so we're going to evoke out our Fury, pitching our Shatter Skull Smashing, dealing 3 to the Construct, and killing a Thopter, and then we'll Unholy Heat their Reality Chip, and play out a Murktide Regent, and then play a Misty. Opponent plays out a Teferi, and then they bounce our Murktide, playing out a Ragavan Triumph for turn, and we top deck a Dress Down, and we'll hold up Cycling Shark Typhoon. They tick up with their Teferi, and then they play out a Sword of the Meek, and on the end step, we will cycle our Shark Typhoon for 4, top decking the Spyro. We draw a land for turn, we'll attack the Teferi, they sack a Sword and get a 1/1, and then they block our Shark. Then we'll cast out our Spyro, and we'll discard a Murktide and a Dead Gone, and we'll cast out a Brazen Borrower, and then play out a Spire Bluff Canal. They tick up with Teferi and cast out a Portable Hole, taking our Shark token, and then they cast out a Stoneforge Mystic, grabbing a Cauldra. Then we draw another island, we're too far behind, we just can't beat the Sword combo or a Cauldra, so let's get on to sideboarding. We're going to take out Shark Typhoon Chandra, draw our Disruption, Spell Snare, Mistress Bauble, Fury, Dead Gone, Seasoned Pyromancer, and a Spikefield Hazard for Hercules Recall, Alpine Moon, Relic, Unlicensed Curse, Brotherhood's Inn, a Magus, Mystical Dispute, Force Negation, and an EE. Game 2, our hand looks fine. We'll lead on a turn 1 Canal. Opponent goes turn 1 Artifact Land. Hercules is looking great already. And we top deck Ragavan, we'll play that out into an island. Opponent plays out an Esper Sentinel into
into a Triome. We find a Brotherhood's Inn, we will bolt the Sentinel, paying for the tax, and attack in with Rag. And we exile an Urza, and we'll play Island, holding up Counterspell and Hercules. Opponent plays an Island into a Nettlesus. We find an Opt, we will cast that, and we'll put a Deluge on top, drawing it. Then we'll cast a Hercules, returning everything to our opponent's hand. Then attack in with Ragavan, exiling a Reality Chip, which I kind of want to cast, but I won't. We'll just hold up Counterspell. Opponent plays a Coast into a Foundry, so we will counterspell that. Then plays out a Chromatic Star. We top deck a Logic Knot, we'll attack with Rag, and we exile a Stoneforge, and we'll just hold up our Deluge and Logic Knot. Opponent casts out a Nettlesus. In response, we will cast a Deluge, and we'll put Heat and a Spell Pierce in our hand, and then Spell Pierce the Nettlesus. And then they play a tapped artifact land. We top deck an Alpine Moon, we'll attack in for 2, and then we'll buy our Loot Tree, passing. Opponent plays out another Thopter Foundry, and we'll let that resolve. They sacrifice their star, getting a 1/1 and drawing a card. And they miss a land drop. We draw a Dispute. We'll lead on casting our Brotherhood's Inn, destroying all artifacts with CMC 3 or less. And in response, they sacked a Foundry, just gaining a life. Then we attack them with Fragment again. Ooh, and we get an Urza off of their top, so we will cast that for sure. And we can even hold up a Mystical Dispute still. Opponent plays a Talisman of Progress, and then cast it to Fairy, which we have a Dispute for. That was a sick turn for us. We top deck a Fable, we'll attack in with the team, then we'll cast that our Fable, and we can still hold up Logic Knot. Opponent plays out a Citadel into a Teferi, so we will Logic Knot that. And opponent scoops them up. Let's get into game 3. And game 3, our hand looks so strong. Opponent leads on a turn 1 bridge. We draw a Relic for turn, we'll play Island, holding up Consider and Opt. And opponent plays out a Saga, then cast out a Talisman. So we'll cast our Opt out, and we'll bottom an EI, finding an Island. We draw Serum Visions, we'll play Island, holding up Lose Focus and Consider. Opponent plays Otawara, holding up Saga activation, so we consider. And we will keep a Dress Down. We find a Deluge, we'll shock in our Steam Vents, and then cast out our Magus. And they have a Metallic Rebuke countering it. They float a mana off Saga and grab a Springleaf Strum, and then play out an Urza, and then play out an Esper Sentinel. We find a Flooded Strand, we'll play that out, cast out a Serum Visions, and we'll pay for the tax. And I don't think any of these cards help us, so we'll fetch shock and go to our end step, and then cast a Dress Down, which means we turn off Urza, and the construct dies, and we find another island. Opponent plays out a Sword of Fire and Ice into a Flooded Strand, which grabs a Plains, and then they equip the sword to the Esper Sentinel, attacking us for 3, triggering sword, dealing 2 damage to us, and they draw a card. We find a Spire Bluff Canal. I think our only way out of this is to Jace Brainstorm, and they draw a card. We brainstorm with Jace, not finding much. We'll put back 2 lands, and then cast out our Relic, I think. Opponent plays out a Stoneforge Mystic, and opponent picks up a Nettlesus, and that should be lethal here. Yep, and they cast out the Nettlesus, they equip it to Esper Sentinel, and they have lethal here, so we end up getting 2-3. While 2-3 is not great, we definitely messed up a few times, but anyways, I hope you all enjoyed the video. Please consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video.